the country that controls the world's internet. Right now, at this very second, you are using the internet. You opened a browser, tapped an app, or pressed play on a video, and somewhere, deep underground, under thousands of feet of ocean water, a pulse of light traveled through a glass fiber no thicker than a human hair and delivered this moment to you in milliseconds. That is the internet. Not clouds, not satellites, cables, physical cables lying at the bottom of the sea. And here is the question nobody is asking. Who owns those cables? Who built them? Who controls what passes through them? The answer to that question will change the way you see the internet forever. Because one country, one single country, has positioned itself at the center of almost every connection on Earth. Before we get to that country, you need to understand something that most people never think about. We talk about the internet as if it is invisible, as if it floats in the air like magic. But the internet is not magic. It is infrastructure, and infrastructure is physical. When you send an email from New York to Tokyo, that email does not go up to space and bounce back down. In almost every case, it travels through a cable, a submarine cable, a cable that was loaded onto a massive ship, slowly unspooled across thousands of miles of open ocean, and gently lowered onto the sea floor. There are over 400 of these cables right now, crisscrossing the oceans of the world. Together, they carry roughly 95% of all international internet traffic, nearly every video call, every financial transaction, every government communication, every search. And here is something even more astonishing. These cables are incredibly thin. Most of the outer protective layers are about the thickness of a garden hose. Inside, the actual fiber cores are thinner than a strand of hair. Yet somehow, these fragile threads of glass carry the entire weight of modern civilization. Now, these cables do not just float free in the ocean. They connect at specific points. They land at specific places on shore. These landing points, these connection nodes, are the choke points of the global internet. Control the landing points, and you control the flow of information. Control the cables, and you control the world. So, which country controls the cables? The answer is not China, though China is trying. The answer is not Russia, though Russia has threatened these cables before. The answer is the United States of America. And more specifically, the handful of American technology companies that have quietly, methodically, built the backbone of the global internet and placed it under American jurisdiction, American law, and American intelligence access. Let us be precise about what that means. For most of the internet's early history, submarine cables were built by telecom companies, AT&T, British Telecom, NTT from Japan, working in consortiums. The cost and the control were shared. But starting around 2010, something changed. Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon began building their own private submarine cables, not renting capacity, not partnering with telecoms, building, owning, operating. Today, these 4 American companies own or co-own a staggering share of the world's undersea cable capacity. Google alone has invested in more than 30 submarine cable systems. Their cables now span the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, and wrap around Africa. Think about that. A single private company, a company based in Mountain View, California, has built a cable network that rivals the infrastructure of entire nations. And it is not just cables. It is the entire stack. American companies control the operating systems on your phone. American companies run the app stores. American companies host the websites. American companies process the payments. American companies provide the cloud computing that runs most of the world's digital services. Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Meta. 5 companies, 1 country. The entire digital world running through American hands. This did not happen by accident. This was the result of decades of deliberate policy, extraordinary investment, and a particular philosophy about how the internet should work. It starts in 1969. The United States Department of Defense funds a research project called ARPANET, a network designed to survive nuclear war by routing information around destroyed nodes. This is the direct ancestor of the modern internet. America built the internet. That is not a political statement. That is history. For the first 20 years, the internet was almost entirely American. American universities, American military contractors, American researchers. And when it opened to the public in the early 1990s, American companies were the first to commercialize it. Amazon launched in 1994, Yahoo in 1995, Google in 1998, Facebook in 2004. These were not just companies. They were the scaffolding of an entirely new civilization. Meanwhile, American policy actively worked to shape the global internet in America's image. The United States pushed for an open, privatized, commercially driven internet, as opposed to the intergovernmental model that many countries preferred. And because America was the dominant economic and military power of the post-Cold War era, the world largely went along. ICANN, the organization that manages internet addresses and domain names, was created as a California nonprofit in 1998 under the oversight of the United States Department of Commerce. For almost 2 decades, the United States government had formal authority over the global address book of the internet. Even today, after a 2016 reform, ICANN operates under California law, and its leadership is heavily American. And then there is the National Security Agency. In 2013, Edward Snowden revealed that the NSA had been conducting a massive global surveillance program, tapping directly into the infrastructure of American internet companies, intercepting the communications of foreign leaders, and monitoring the internet traffic of hundreds of millions of people around the world. The world was outraged. And yet nothing fundamentally changed, because the alternative, an internet built on Chinese or Russian infrastructure, looked far worse to most governments. America had built the internet. America sat at the center. And the rest of the world had to choose, live with American control or build something new. China chose to build something new, or rather, something parallel. Inside China, the internet looks completely different. Google is blocked, Facebook is blocked, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, WhatsApp, all blocked. In their place, Chinese equivalents, Baidu, WeChat, Weibo, Douyin, which you may know as TikTok. This is the Great Firewall, a system of censorship, filtering, and surveillance that has effectively carved China off from the global internet. China has built its own internet, and it works. 800 million users, a domestic tech economy worth trillions of dollars, a model that other authoritarian governments look at with envy. But China has not stopped there. It wants to challenge American dominance of the global internet, not just protect itself behind a wall. This is where the Belt and Road Initiative comes in. China's massive infrastructure investment program spans over 100 countries, and it includes digital infrastructure. Chinese state companies like Huawei and ZTE have been offering to build 5G networks across Africa, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America, often at prices that Western companies cannot match. And then there are cables. China has been investing heavily in its own submarine cable systems, the Peace Cable, the HMN Technologies Network, formerly known as Huawei Marine,
the sail cable connecting Asia and Africa. The United States government has noticed. In 2020, the Trump administration launched the Clean Network Initiative, pressuring allies and partners to exclude Chinese companies from their digital infrastructure. Deals that would have allowed Huawei Marine to land cables in countries with close U.S. ties were blocked or renegotiated. The Internet is being weaponized as a geopolitical battlefield, and the fight is not just between countries. It is between two completely different visions of what the Internet should be. America's vision: open, commercial, privately operated, but anchored in American law and American values. China's vision: sovereign, state-controlled, nationally bounded, and exported to countries that want to control their own population's information. The rest of the world is being asked to choose a side, and many have not yet decided. We've talked about cables, we've talked about platforms, but the deepest layers of American Internet control are almost invisible, even to most technology professionals. Let us talk about DNS, the domain name system. This is the phone book of the Internet. When you type a web address, your device consults a series of servers that translate that human-readable name into a numerical address. The root servers, the highest level of this system, are operated by 12 organizations. 10 of them are American, the other 2 are nonprofit organizations with significant American involvement. Whoever controls DNS can, in theory, make websites disappear. And this has happened. In 2010, the United States government seized the domain names of dozens of websites, including some operated outside the United States, simply by pressuring the American-based domain registrars. Then there is cloud computing. Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud together control well over 60% of the global cloud market.
Most of the world's websites, apps, and digital services run on these 3 American platforms. When Amazon Web Services goes down, and it has gone down, huge swaths of the Internet go dark, from Tokyo to Cape Town. Then there is semiconductors. Every device connected to the Internet runs on chips. And while the chips are often manufactured in Taiwan or South Korea, the designs are overwhelmingly American. ARM Holdings, acquired by American investors, designs the chip architecture inside most of the world's smartphones. Intel, Qualcomm, NVIDIA. These are American companies whose designs power the hardware of the global Internet. And then there is the most powerful choke point of all: financial infrastructure. Visa and MasterCard, American companies, process the majority of global digital payments. SWIFT, the financial messaging network, is technically Belgian, but operates under heavy American influence. The United States has demonstrated through sanctions on Iran, Russia, and others that it can effectively disconnect countries from the global financial Internet. Taken together, these choke points give the United States a degree of leverage over the global digital economy that has no historical precedent. Rome controlled the roads. Britain controlled the seas. America controls the data. You might be thinking, okay, but so what? I am not a government. I am not a spy. Why does it matter who controls the Internet? It matters because your data crosses these cables every single day. When you use Gmail, your emails are processed by Google's servers, most of which are in the United States or in countries with data sharing agreements with the United States. Under the Cloud Act, passed in 2018, American law enforcement can compel American tech companies to hand over data stored anywhere in the world.
not just in America, anywhere. When your country's government communicates through American platforms, those communications are potentially accessible to American intelligence agencies. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is documented. Angela Merkel's personal phone was tapped. The communications of dozens of foreign leaders were intercepted. This came out in 2013, and it was real. When your country relies on American cloud infrastructure to run its hospitals, its power grid, its financial system, it has handed over a critical dependency to a foreign power. Most countries have accepted this trade-off because American infrastructure is reliable and cheap. But reliability can change. Relationships can change. And for individuals in authoritarian countries, the stakes are even higher. The internet is a lifeline, a way to access uncensored information, organize politically, communicate with the outside world. The architecture of the internet, designed largely by Americans who believed in freedom of information, has generally supported this. But that architecture is not permanent. It is a choice, and choices can be changed. The future of your digital life, your privacy, your access to information, your ability to communicate, is being decided right now. In courtrooms in Washington, in data centers in Virginia, in cable-laying ships crossing the Pacific, in boardrooms in Beijing. And most people have no idea it is happening. So where does this go from here? There are three possible futures for the global internet. The first is the continuation of American dominance. The US-led internet, open but surveilled, commercially vibrant but increasingly contested. This is the status quo. It benefits American companies, broadly upholds freedom of information, but leaves the rest of the world dependent on infrastructure it does not control. The second is fragmentation, the splinter net. China has already broken off. Russia is building technical capacity to disconnect from the global internet entirely. Iran, North Korea, and others have followed varying degrees of this path. If more countries build their own sovereign internet systems, you end up with dozens of incompatible, isolated digital worlds. Trade suffers. Communication breaks down. The extraordinary interconnectedness of the modern era begins to fray. The third possibility, the hardest to achieve but the most hopeful, is genuine internationalization. A new governance model for the global internet that is not controlled by any single country. Cables owned by international consortiums. Cloud infrastructure distributed across neutral jurisdictions. Internet governance bodies that actually reflect the diversity of the world's 8 billion people. Some steps have been taken in this direction. The 2016 transfer of ICANN oversight away from the US government was one. The growing investment in non-American internet infrastructure by Japan, the European Union, and others is another. But the fundamental architecture remains American at its core. And given how deep those roots go, the cables, the platforms, the protocols, the chips, changing it will take decades.
If it happens at all, every time you open your phone, You are participating in the most complex infrastructure project in human history. Billions of dollars of cables on the ocean floor. Millions of servers in climate-controlled warehouses. Satellites in orbit. Protocols designed by engineers in universities you have never heard of, in languages you may not speak. And threading through all of it, quietly, invisibly, is power. The power to connect, the power to disconnect, the power to watch, the power to decide what information flows freely and what does not. That power, for now, sits largely in one country. The question is not whether that is good or bad. The question is whether you knew, and now that you do, what you choose to do with that knowledge. If this video made you think differently about something you use every single day, share it with someone who should know. And if you want to go deeper on any of these topics, the cables, the surveillance, the splinternet, I have linked resources in the description. This has been the country that controls the world's internet. I will see you in the next one.